Okay, hello everyone. My name is Shafalma Firdausi N and my friends Devi Ayu. We are from English Education Study Programs UNUSA. We will explain about relative clause. What is relative clause? In relative clause, we have two points that are defining relative. Those are defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause. And the point of non-defining relative clause will explain by my friends Devi Ayu. Now, what is defining relative clause? Defining relative clause is to add essential information to a sentence. The clauses goes immediately after the noun it describes. For example, this is a man who sold me the car. Why we use relative clause who sold me the car? Because the man I pointed is who I bought the car. Okay. We use relative pronoun who, which, where, whose, when, why, whom. Who is for that or for people, who or that for people, which or that for objects, where for places, whose to talk about possession, when or that for a time, why or that for a reason, and whom for object pronoun or people. For example, he is the man who owns this car. The man I point at is who is the owner of the car. And the next example, this is the house where I was born. The third is the girl whose party I went to phone me. Okay, now we move to next slide. We can leave out who, which, that, whose when the clause is the object of a sentence. For example, the doctor I spoke to told me not to worry. The man I saw was very rude. Mr. Smith is the teacher my son likes best. The doctor, the man, and Mr. Smith is the object of the sentence. If the object is in front of the sentence, we can leave the relative pronouns who, which, that, whose. We can use the relative clause without that. And then, if the subject is in front of the sentence, like the doctor who treated me told me not to worry, the sentence must use the relative pronoun. Like that's the dog that attacked my children. Okay. Do you understand, Debbie?
Okay, I got it. I got it. I got
Okay.
it.
Okay, for the next. Oh, not yet. I think enough. Okay, and the next slide. In defining relative clause, why and when, unlike where, can be omitted. For example, I would like to know the reason he decided not to come. Why can omitted? We can use he decided not to come immediately without why, because why and when can be omitted, but where can be omitted. She always had wanted to go to a place where she could speak or her native tongue. Okay, the next point will explained by Devi Ayu.
Okay, thank you, Shafalma. For the non-defining relative clause is we use non-defining relative clauses to add non-essential or not important information to a sentence. The clause goes immediately after the noun is described. If we remove the relative clause, the sentence would still make sense of its own. For the example, Pedro, who is my brother, lives in a stillero. Who is my brother is not important on this sentence. So this is a non-defining relative clause. Next slide. For defining relative clause, we use commas to separate a non-defining clause from the rest of the sentence. We use relative pronouns like in the previous slide is who, which, where, when, whose. Who is for people, which is for things, where is for place, when is for time, whose, and then the last is whose is for possession. For the example, Santander, commas, where I live, commas, is a beautiful city. Next slide. And then in the non-defining relative clauses, we cannot leave out the relative pronoun. For the example, John, who is English, helped me write the essay. We cannot leave who in the sentence because who is the relative pronoun. Okay, next slide.
I think enough.
Okay, okay, enough. So, do you understand, Alma?
I got it. I think
Okay,
enough.
thank you. Okay, thank you for your time to listen our presentation today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.